Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Scareclaw Yugioh deck profile for post Photon Hypernova. Big thanks to my buddy Nick for letting me borrow his Scareclaw deck. They got some new support in the latest Yu-Gi-Oh booster set in the form of a new Scareclaw Kashtira along with a couple new spell cards to the deck. It's a real control style deck focusing on getting out your main go-to monsters, Scareclaw Tryheart, and then just shutting down all of your opponent's plays by switching their monsters to defense mode and making it so while it's in the extra monster zone, being able to special summon your other Scareclaw resources onto the field, and then also being able just to stop any of the activated effects of defense position monsters. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. For the Scareclaws, we're running 3 copies of Scareclaw Rykart. You can special summon this card from your hand during your main monster zone adjacent to a Scareclaw monster you control, or in its column. You can always special summon Scareclaw Rykart once per turn this way. If this card is normal or special summon, you can add 1 Scareclaw spell or trap from your deck to your hand. Then if 3 or more defense position monsters are on the field, you can draw 1 card. So you have draw power set up with all of your many different go-to Scareclaw monsters. With this playstyle, being able just to easily special summon out your resources to get out your main go-to boss monster, needing 3 effect monsters to summon out your Scareclaw Tryheart onto the field. We're also running 3 copies of Scareclaw Balone. You can special summon this card from your hand to your main monster zone adjacent to a Scareclaw monster you control, or in its column. You can only special summon Balone once per turn this way, and if your Scareclaw monster in the extra monster zone attacks a defense monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. So it's all part of that Link 3 special summon play, just giving you an extra monster effect, thanks to Scareclaw Balone being special summoned into that zone and giving that monster piercing damage to hit your opponent's monsters that'll also be in defense. Also running 3 copies of Scareclaw Acro, is being the same special summon play as well. And also with this card, your Scareclaw monster in the extra monster zone gain 300 attack for each defense position monster you control. So if you have 3 monsters pointing at those arrows, it's an additional 900 attack points. And then if you have cards like Balone, giving it piercing, means that the majority of those hits that your Scareclaw Tryheart will hit against your opponent will deal some pretty massive damage against them as well. The last of our level 3 Scareclaw monsters include 3 copies of Scareclaw Astra. You can special summon this card from your hand to his main monster zone as well. And also your Scareclaw monsters in the extra monster zone can attack a number of times each battle phase up to the number of defense position Scareclaw monsters you control with different names. If you have all 3 of the level 3s, Astra, Balone, and Acro, you can have a powerhouse monster with piercing battle damage that can swing multiple times up to the cards you control with different names. So that could be the game-winning play right then and there if you have all your resources ready to use. For the new Scareclaw monster, we're running 2 copies of Scareclaw Kashtira. During the main phase quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do banish 1 Kashtira or Scareclaw card from your hand or graveyard, you can only use this effect of Scareclaw Kashtira once per turn. This card can attack while in face-up defense position. If it does, apply its defense for damage calculation, and if your Kashtira or Scareclaw monster battles an opponent's monster, that opponent's monster's effects are negated until the end of this turn. So it doesn't really matter that Tryheart will switch all your monsters, because your Scareclaw Kashtira can still attack while in defense position, and it only stops the activated effects of defense monsters. So also it's unaffected by those plays, but still you can have your monster attack in defense and not really be affected by any of that playstyle, since this monster will still be able to swing into your opponent and stop their opponent's monster effects. But you really only need the 2, though. You have some other search options in the deck for your Scareclaw Kashtira cards. We're also running 2 copies of Vysis Starfrost. If this card's in your hand, you can target 1 monster you control with a different type and attribute than this card, destroy that monster. And if you do special summon this card, you can only use this effect of Vysis Starfrost once per turn. And when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can make this card gain attack equal to half the original attack and defense of that monster. It's just another easy resource to summon out on the field for you to make use of with your other Scareclaw cards. And with that setup also being searchable with some of the other cards we're running in the deck, which we'll get to in just a little bit. For the last of the main deck monsters, also 3 copies of Rescue Cat. This just gets you 2 of your Scareclaw Beast monsters on the field. So when you special summon them out, if you have those monsters, you can have 1 additional special summon from your hand just to one of the adjacent zones of the Scareclaw monsters. And with that, you have your 3 monsters needed for the link summon of your Vysis, not Vysis Starfrost, the Scareclaw Tryheart onto the field. that is it for the main deck monsters. We'll now move on to the spells. We're running 3 copies of Scareclaw Arrival. Target 1 Scareclaw monster or Visas Starfrost in your graveyard. Special summon it in defense. If a Scareclaw Link monster you control will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. So not only is it just an easy special summon from your graveyard onto the field, it can also protect your Scareclaw monster on the field, giving you that Link monster option. If your opponent attempts to get over that monster, you at least have a spell card that can hold off from that play by banishing it from the graveyard. We're also running 2 copies of Primitive Planet Resophobia. The reason we run 2 copies of this card, just because you have the search power, thanks to your Scareclaw Lightheart, to be able to add this card from your deck to your hand. When it's activated, you can add 1 Scareclaw monster or Visas Starfrost from your deck to your hand. Monsters your opponent controls lose 100 attack and defense for each defense monster on the field. If 3 or more defense monsters are on the field, you can target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. So you have destruction power thanks to this card, but once again, you just need the 2 copies. It's a searchable card thanks to your Link 1 Scareclaw monster. And also 2 copies of Scareclaw Straddle. You can activate one of the following effects. Target 1 Scareclaw monster or 1 Visas Starfrost in your monster zone, and 1 face-up monster your opponent control. It gains attack and defense equal to your opponent's monster's attack or defense, whichever is higher. More of a power play move for your monster on the field. Or when a card or effect is activated that targets a Scareclaw monster, you can negate that effect. You can only use 1 Scareclaw Straddle per turn. So more protection. It is a quick play spell, so you have that resource ready to stop any of your opponent's cards. For the new spell, we're running 2 copies of Scareclaw Defanging. Your opponent cannot target Scareclaw Link monsters or Visas Starfrost you control with card effects. Also, they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Banish any number destroyed by battle with Scareclaw monster or Link monster or Visas Starfrost you control. Having the banish option for those cards is a very Kashtira-like playstyle for your Scareclaw monsters, but also with this card, you can banish 1 Scareclaw Link monster from your field or graveyard to target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. So more destruction power just with one of the easier Scareclaw, Link monsters you can summon out on the field to use for this play. And for the last of these Scareclaw spells, 2 copies of Scareclaw Decline. You target 1 Primitive Planet Resophobia you control or in your graveyard, return it to the hand. Then if you control Visas Starfrost, you can change 1 face-up monster your opponent controls to face-down defense position. If 3 or more defense position monsters are on the field, you can banish this card from your graveyard to add 1 Scareclaw card from your graveyard to your hand, adding that monster resource back, but also being able just to recycle the field spell back to the hand as well. Using this card is the other justification for you to run 2, so then you just have other ways to reactivate this card thanks to another spell card that you can search out with some of the monsters we run in the deck, like our Scareclaw cards. For some of the more generic spells, I also run 2 copies of Pot of Prosperity. If you don't have Prosperities, you can always try out cards like Upstart Goblin or Pot of Desires, since we are running a good number of 3-ofs in the deck to use for the draw power to your hand. And for the 1-ofs for the spells, 1 copy of Call by the Grave, 1 Monster Reborn, and 1 Reinforcements of the Army, with Reinforcements of the Army being able to search out the Scareclaw Rykart to our hand. Moving on now to the traps. For the traps, we're running 3 copies of Scareclaw Splash. Once per turn, you can target 1 Scareclaw monster or 1 Visas Starfrost you control. It can attack while in face-up defense position this turn. If it does, apply its attack or defense, whichever is higher for damage calc. And when your opponent activates a card or effect while you control a Scareclaw monster in the extra monster zone, you can send this face-up card to the graveyard to negate that effect. So that's why we're running 3 of this continuous trap, because you will send it more often than not to stop your opponent's card effects. So then you just have another one to reactivate again. With the last of the Scareclaw traps that we run, 2 copies of Scareclaw Twinsaw. Tribute 1 Scareclaw monster, then target 2 cards your opponent controls, destroy them. If you control Visas Starfrost, banish those destroyed cards instead. That's another reason why we're running the Visas Starfrost setup, so you have more of a banish play to utilize with those monsters that your opponent may have. That is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. We're running 3 copies of Scareclaw Tryhard. It's your go-to boss monster, so you definitely want to run 3 of this card. It must be Link Summon. All face-up monsters on the field are changed to defense position, unaffected by the activated effects of defense position monsters. And once per turn, if this card's in the extra monster zone, you can target 1 level 3 Scareclaw in your graveyard and special summon it. And if you do, add 1 Scareclaw monster from your deck to your hand. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn except for Scareclaw monsters. This can just set up the resource for your level 3 Scareclaw monsters, summoning 1 to the field, and adding another for you just to special summon adjacent to that with the power of both, whether it be attack boost, piercing, or multiple attacks that this card can gain. For the next Link monster, 3 copies of Scareclaw Lightheart, 1 Scareclaw monster, or 1 Visa Starfrost to summon this Link one out. For this card's Link summon, you can also use monsters in your main monster zone as material. If this card is, you can only use monsters in your main monster zone as material. If this card's Link summon from the extra monster zone, you can add 1 Primitive Planet Restophobia from your deck to your hand. So your Lightheart can just set up more of the searches if you just have 1 Scareclaw monster in your hand, setting this card up for that search, adding your field spell, and then activating it, searching out another monster, and then from there you have another special summon, since it'll be in the same column as your Scareclaw Lightheart on the field. And then for the other Link monsters, since we are running Pot of Prosperity, I'm also running 3 copies of Nightmare Unicorn, just so you have potential banish options with the card, and also with Kashtira being quite scary, you will have multiple, so your opponent doesn't know what to banish from your extra deck, since we're also running 2 copies of IP Masquerena. Once again, Prosperity banish targets, or if your opponent does, use cards like number 94 to banish your cards, with some of the other Link monsters being 1 Barricade Board Blocker, 1 the Dark Charmer, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, and the 1 Apollosa for all of the more generic Link summons to get out. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, like I said before, Rescue Cat definitely does help with its option for being able to send this card to the graveyard to special summon 2 Scareclaw monsters onto the field. So let's say you summon out 2 of the ones and you have 1 of the other ones in your hand. So with that play, you can then summon out the last one, go for a Link summon into your Lightheart. With that being a special summon, you can then use your Lightheart to add the field spell from your deck to your hand, activating the field spell, and then when it's activated, adding a Scareclaw card from your deck to your hand. The monster will be Rykart. You can normal summon out your Rykart, or special summon it, since it will be in the same adjacent zone. You can only special summon Rykart once per turn this way. If this card's normal or special summon, you can add the Scareclaw spell or trap from your deck to your hand of your choice. You can go for your Defanging for more of a protection for your Link monsters, activating it on the field, and then using 3 of your Scareclaws to then go for your bigger boss monster, being your Tryheart on the field. And then you have the special summon of the 1 additional one from your graveyard, but you also want to make sure you summon out the one that you may not have already used the special summon play. So use the Rescue Cat monster that you special summon out as the Link play, and leave the one that you special summoned out initially onto the field, so you can special summon that last target off of its own card effect. And with that, you have 3 monsters set up with your Tryheart and a spell that protects it on the field as well. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Once again, thanks again to my buddy Nick for letting me borrow his Scareclaw deck for the update with the Photon Hypernova support. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.